Trump says, I was being president. I was not campaigning at that time. Why would that matter?
Well, it matters because we're talking about official acts, and only official acts are covered by executive or presidential immunity. Things like campaigning have historically been held to be outside the scope of one's official duties, so presidents can be sued. Now, obviously, we're talking about uncharted legal waters here, but that's why you see Trump and his legal team trying to pigeonhole his conduct into official acts and say that it was investigating election fraud or voter integrity.
Okay, so let's say it was an official act. And the thing that really caught my attention was that question by one judge. They asked Trump this, quote, one of his lawyers, your president could sell pardons, could sell military secrets, could tell SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival. And they said, basically, well, if there's no impeachment and there's no prosecution, yeah, you cannot pursue that. And I said, what? Does that make sense to you as a former federal prosecutor?
It doesn't, and I loved Avajoy's coverage there. So there's two issues we're dealing with, and let's talk about what the Constitution says and what it doesn't. It says that if an individual is impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate, they can still be criminally prosecuted. What it doesn't talk about is if someone is impeached and acquitted, like Donald Trump was, or if someone isn't impeached at all, can they still be prosecuted? So there was that discussion, and the judges raised some good points. What if it's something that's just unlawful, period, like assassinating your political rival? Or what if it's an official act, but for an unlawful purpose, such as selling military secrets or pardons? Would that be covered? Trump's lawyers said yes. They said that unless there's an impeachment and a conviction, a president can't be prosecuted. That's a legal stretch, in my opinion.
Okay. So this was a three-judge panel. If they rule against Donald Trump, he can ask, my understanding is, the full D.C. circuit to hear the case, right? Would that take up even more time? Because, I mean, I guess he could say, let's go to the Supreme Court. But if you want to stretch it out, you say, no, I want the full court to hear this, right?
Well, absolutely. We know Donald Trump wants to stretch it out because he opposed the fast track appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. And you're right. You know, it'll probably take weeks for this opinion to come out. And then Trump's lawyers can petition for a hearing en banc, which means the entire D.C. Court of Appeals. So if the appellate judges decide to take the case, then we'll have a second round of oral arguments and another set of opinions before it goes all the way to the inevitable appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court.
So with that in mind then, Neama, what are the odds of a full prosecution, as Jack Smith wants, and even possible conviction before the election, you know, which is in November?
It's becoming less and less likely for this reason, not necessarily because of the appellate courts, but because Judge Chutkan in D.C., the judge overseeing that election fraud case, has issued a stay or a pause in the case while these proceedings play out. Of course, if she lifts that stay and the prosecution moves forward, then we may see a trial. But as long as that stay is in place and Trump and his team are litigating this and potentially delaying it procedurally, we're not going to see a substantive trial in the merits.
I say, okay, so you would have to stay at Chutkan stated. Now, down in Georgia, would that case be stalled? Because that's, you know, this other thing is moving through the federal system, but Trump just made a very similar immunity argument in Fulton County. So will that be on hold too?
Well, potentially, yes, but let's not forget in Fulton County, we don't even have a trial date yet. So one thing Jack Smith did was try to fast track this case in D.C. He only charged Donald Trump. He didn't charge all the other co-conspirators like we saw Fani Willis in Atlanta do. So that case was obviously the last to be filed as well. So it's going to be trailing these other cases. So I would be surprised if we get a trial date in Atlanta before these other cases move forward.